Hi, I'm Michelle. This is my So-Called Handmade Life podcast. I have a blog called My So-Called Handmade Life that I've had 10 years, and I'm on Ravelry. I am actually Ravelry user number 187,412, and I have been on Ravelry since September of 2008. I'm Mamatronic on Ravelry. I'm on it a lot. I don't have a podcast group there because I don't want to be somebody who starts a group and then never visits it. But there may be a place for that eventually. I don't know that I'm getting that many comments anyway that I would want to have one. But I'm on Ravelry a lot, and I'm very active in other groups, and you can see what those are if you go to my About Me page. I want to talk more about Ravelry because I saw that great interview on Fruity Knitting with Jess and Casey, the founders of Ravelry. But first, let me say, graduation's over. My son, my youngest, has graduated, and he's going to be living on campus, but at a nearby college. And it's like a new era in mine and my husband's life. It's just going to be us and all the crazy animals that are down at my feet. You can't see them below me. That graduation ceremony was totally earned. I'm very, very proud of my son. The 4 years that he has been in high school, he has accomplished a lot because of his drive, his personal discipline. And he has done quite a bit for other people. I'm really proud of that. It's been a hard 4 years because I've mentioned my grandparents a lot on this. I'm just going to mention them every episode pretty much, but hopefully it won't often be these last few years, which were the end of their lives. But I've been so affected by it. It just has affected so much in our lives. It's kind of a matter of fact. The last 4 years, his 4 years of high school, have had these sweet, precious moments with my grandparents, but also these really difficult ones. And he was there for all of it. He would sit with my grandfather when I needed to take my grandmother to a doctor, say. My grandfather had dementia, and he was very antsy when she was away. He didn't like being away from home, so he really didn't do well when he went with us, but he was more comfortable knowing where she was because he was starting to forget people. And he knew my son, and he knew me, but he just really needed the security of his wife by him. And so it was very hard for him when she had to go to a doctor, but he hated going, so he didn't need to go. And my son would sit with him, and he would offer my son a Dr. Pepper, and they would sit outside. My grandfather would smoke his pipe, and my son would talk with him. And they'd have the same conversation many times, over and over. And my son would just, every time, just as sweet as ever, answer my grandfather's questions, ask him questions, to kind of draw him out. Talking about the past always was a way to make my grandfather very comfortable, because the earlier in his life things occurred, the more he remembered it toward the end of his life. So, things that happened in his 80s and 70s he would forget, but his family of birth, stuff he did as a boy, he remembered that pretty close to the end. So my son would ask him questions and sit there, and he would do things to help my grandmother and just go with me to visit them. I might ask, hey, do you want to go to visit her after she was alone, and widowed? He would say, yeah, sure. Once in a while he would say, I haven't seen Grandmommy in a while, or when it was both of them, Grandmommy and Papa, I feel like I need to go visit them. So he was a big part of their lives. They saw him very regularly. He was just a big part of their lives. So that was there through his whole high school career, and I was very taken up with that. Mentally, I didn't have a lot of energy to remind him of things, to keep him on track with Boy Scouts. He started Scouts his 9th grade year, and he got his Eagle by the time he was, he was before he was 18, so maybe the end of his junior year. He did that all by himself. One day, we made him sit and write out a timeline of what he has to accomplish by what date if he really wants Eagle But if he didn't do that, that would be fine. I mean, that's a lot to do in a short 3 years, so, or 2.5 years. We didn't really want him to push it. We just wanted him to enjoy the group, but he wanted to do it, and he did it. And he did it all by himself, other than that one day where we made him map it out. He did it all. Very proud of him for that. And then in schoolwork, he wanted to make good grades. He was really hoping for a good scholarship. And he did graduate with honors, and he got a good scholarship. But I'm proud of that, sure. But what I'm really proud of is the way that he was organized, and he was very disciplined. And he wanted to make good grades, and so he tried his hardest. But there came a point his junior year where he had to decide, did he want to spend his senior year stacking so many AP classes, 2 AP maths, 2 AP sciences, just to get a rank, even if he didn't need those classes for what he would study in college, even if he was really busy with sports too? Would that be healthy? I was really proud of him for saying, you know what, I don't have to have every accolade. I'm not going to take that many AP classes because it's just not balanced. And he tried for art again, but it didn't work with his schedule. He didn't get scheduled in an art class, but he took like a office aide. So he got a study hall period, and it was restful. I was really proud of him. My daughter did the same thing. She made the same choice at some point. Am I living for this class ranking? Is that healthy? And obviously it's not. So I was really pleased. And he actually had great ranking anyway, so it kind of worked out for him. But anyway, so I'm just proud of the person that he's been the last 4 years and where that's got him now. So this is my Zara tee I did for the Tops, Tanks, and Tees Knit Along with the Very Shannon group. She should be putting on her blog soon the winners of the giveaway and then showing everybody's projects, or most of the projects. I mean, she's getting so many finished objects in her thread now. I don't even know how she'll have room for it all in a blog. She'll have to do lots of little pictures because there's so many of us. But let me stand up and show you. It's hard to show here. It's a very oversized cropped tee. I did it in Lindy Chain, so it's a linen cotton blend. I'm sitting on something pointy. Oh well. Not a knitting needle. It's really oversized, but what I like about this is there's room. It's like not clingy at all. This may look clingy, but here, wait. I'll do this one. It's not clingy. I made the sleeves extra. Well, I added like 8 stitches to each sleeve for that reason. I don't want to feel tight clothing in the summer. I mean, I can handle like workout clothing, tank tops, things like that. And there's times when you're planning to be a sweaty mess, but it's very hot here, very humid, Southeast Texas. So I love this cropped and oversized look. And I don't have anything oversized that's also cropped. So it's a different shape for me. Also, the vertical stripes are applied crochet, which I've never done. And that was an interesting thing to do. So if you're turned off by the idea of using a summer type yarn, because they are a little harder on your hands sometimes to knit in fingering weight, or if you're turned off by the idea of applied crochet, just know the crochet is not hard, and it actually keeps the bottom edge from rolling. There's a little roll here and a slight roll here, and there's no finishing on the neckline or the sleeve, so it sort of makes up for the the fingering weight factor, if that is a deterrent. I know a lot of people really dread fingering weight projects, and especially if it's not in wool, but man, they are so much more wearable in Southeast Texas. I did one other project for the Tops, Tanks, and Tees. I didn't finish it, obviously. I mean, you're going to see. This isn't even hardly worth showing. I started May by Andrea Mowry. I think I showed it to you before, but I'm using sport weight yarn, and it's a very thin sport weight Barocco Remix Light. It's all recycled materials. There's like silk, linen, cotton, nylon in it. It's got a neat little tweedy texture, actually. Let's see if I can get, there you go. This is a neat kind of a green. It's got little yellow specks in it too. It's more sport weight, and the pattern calls for DK, probably DK closer to worsted, so I just had to go down on my needle size and reknit this ribbing. I do have that try it on as you go tubing that I showed you in the last episode, so I am going to be using that. I've used it several times already just to make sure I'm making it big enough to fit me, but I'm doing it like a size larger than I might normally would to try and compensate for that thinner weight yarn and a tighter gauge. So I have very little done on that because I'm about past the ribbing, and it's going to take some focus. And I need a good no-brainer knit right now because everything is requiring focus at the moment. Okay, you know how I told you my Ravelry member number? That interview with the Fruity Knitting duo was awesome. They talked about how they started the site, and what really struck me was why they started the site. It was just out of their interest and kind of a passion. And can we do it? It was like a fun experiment, and then of course it became a community. It was very small, but still a community. There's 6 million or more members now, but at the time there was a few hundred people they talked to via blogs. Everyone was so enthusiastic that it was like they didn't want to let the world, their knitting community down. And they really had no designs on being a moneymaker. It wasn't about commerce. It was just about kind of, for Jess, I'm sure, the love of the knitting and crafting, and for both of them, the community and can we do this? Just the interest and excitement about a project. So I thought that was so great. And of course, it has become a business for them. I read an article. I'm going to link it. I'm going to link everything in the notes. I may not put things down at the bottom of the screen this episode because I have somewhere to go. We're going to go visit my daughter, and I'm not going to have time for all that. But I'll link this article. It was like on a computer's website design magazine or some kind of tech magazine, and the guy is not a knitter, but he was praising their website. This is several years ago, just for the design of it and the way the community works as kind of a closed group. He was just saying there's really nothing like it online. It was pretty interesting. I thought to myself, okay, 2008, I joined Ravelry, and I would just look up patterns here and there, sometimes free ones, and print them out. I would often print patterns I bought out because I was like afraid Ravelry wouldn't exist the next year, you know. I also would print out Knitty issues sometimes because I thought, you know, what if this isn't available? Like, what if the internet disappears? I don't know. It was a long time ago. And I thought about how I joined, and then I see people's patterns, and I'm like, well, I could put pictures of the things, their projects. I could put pictures of my projects. And so I took them all out in the backyard and had my husband click pictures of bright sunlight, you know, like wanting to cover my face for a lot of them. Typical first knitting FO pictures. But it got me interested in documenting what I was making. And I already had a blog. No, I think I started my blog right after I got on Ravelry because I saw links to people's blogs, and I learned about Ravelry through designers' blogs, but I didn't know a lot of real people like who had blogs, and so we were just connecting a lot. It was really good for me. I got involved in Flickr as a photo hosting site, and then next thing you know, I'm learning about amateur photography stuff, taking better FO pictures. I started a 365 project, which was a picture of myself every day for a year. A lot of them are dorky, but so is my blog if you go back. It's still dorky today. So it's just dorkiness all around. But that 365 was so good about stretching me because I wasn't comfortable having my photo taken. And then I would often post the photo on my blog and say something about that day, or if it was just a, whatever photo, not something we were doing, I would just have certain thoughts down. It got me writing more. It was like a little journal. So all of it, just like this podcast, I did for my own personal benefit, so that if nobody ever read my blog, I like going back and looking at things. Oh, I remember when I took that. I remember what was happening at that time in my life. I like it. That's how it was, but it all began with Ravelry. Then there were knit-alongs. I consoled people. They consoled me. I made friendships. I laughed. I learned something. I wouldn't have met Katie without Ravelry, and I wouldn't have gone with her to Iceland without Ravelry. So I have a lot to be grateful for. And as I look back and listen to that, I was looking back and thinking, I looked back at old Knitty patterns, and I faved some of them on Ravelry because I always liked them when I read Knitty, but didn't have Ravelry in the beginning. And I went back, I think one was Janda was the name of it. It's like a Delia's looking hoodie, athletic sweatshirt that you knit. I thought that would still be fun to make today. Anyway, it was just a really neat interview. They did a great job. That podcast is a really good podcast. So, if you do leave a comment on this episode, include your Ravelry member number. If you don't know how to get it, it's a little trick. You go to your About Me page on Ravelry, and you, on the keypad, you click up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. So that's is it called Konami? Yeah, the Konami code. It's like a old Nintendo video game hack, and it's like a glitch, or what do you call it? I can't think of the word for it. Not a hack, but surprise thing. Cheat code. Anyway, I didn't know what it was, but my son recognized it because all these years later, he knows it as a meme. So, up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. And all of a sudden in the middle of your About Me page, you'll see this, and this number will appear, and that is your Ravelry member number. So it's really cute, quirky thing they have for you. Another interview I saw that I really liked was Libby of Truly Myrtle podcast. She interviewed the owners of the Great Ocean Road Mill. It was a neat interview. If you've ever thought about, wow, I wish I could just take off like Jenny and Devin of Handmade and Woolen and just buy a farmstead and start farming and growing, raising animals and growing my vegetables, and you would like this interview on Truly Myrtle because they ordered, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding, they ordered their mill by mail. It was delivered to them, all the equipment set up for them. They were shown kind of how to do it once, and then the delivery guys left, and they were just like, we've got a mill. It's a small mill. I really like the way they process things and do it naturally in a way that the water that they use is clean. They can water their orchard behind the mill with it. It's very sustainable practice they're using. I just thought it was cool that they decided to make this change in their life. It got me thinking how I've wanted to learn how to shear sheep for a while. I don't even know what I would do with it. I know you can, in Texas, there are ranchers and you could travel and do it. And some of them might just grow sheep for meat and you could keep the wool. I don't know. But there's probably plenty of people that do that. But anyway, I used to groom dogs, and I enjoy working with animals and grooming them. You have to work with them, and some are really not into it, but I just think it would be neat to try it with sheep. Anyway, so that was a neat interview. And speaking of Libby, I was doing her Zeta shawl for her knit along, which is already over. I didn't finish in time. It was the spring shawl, summer shawl, autumn wrap up knit along. I think that's what it was called. But it was celebrating the change of seasons, both for us here into summer and for people down under into fall And you can see the lace needs to be stretched out, so the shaping of this is distorted because it's not blocked. But look at these really cool gathers. I just love these little, it looks like little welts in the fabric. It's so different. The lace is neat, and I like this slip stitch border between the lace sections. These are beautiful colors also by Red Sock Blue Sock. It's Soft Romance and Gentleman, and they look really great together. Wow, I am running low on Gentleman. Yikes. I hope I don't need to get more. I mean, I can do that, but I don't know if it would match up. I would say I'm halfway through with this. It's hard to tell, though, when you're slowly building more and more stitches. I'll show you what Zeta is supposed to look like, though, so that you'll know. Let me see. Here we go. You can see Zeta and a bunch of dirty fingerprints on my iPad. It's really neat shape. And those little gathers, they're just really cool. So those things are all in the process. Thank you, those of you who mentioned how you're dealing with certain recycling waste issues, because, you know, I've started trying to do that more. And Carolyn was saying, like, in the UK, there are a lot of places where the grocery stores are paper only. They don't allow plastics unless it's like a product pre-packaged, you know, and maybe even a lot of that isn't as common. But one thing she told me I thought was neat was that a lot of farms have gone back to glass milk bottles, or offer a sort of vending machine where you bring your own containers and you pay for them to be filled. I think that's a great idea. Catherine was saying that as far as like how to handle broken appliances, she doesn't have many, and would definitely try to make something last rather than buy new. Because I was debating, I really don't want to get a new dishwasher. If we were to move, it looks good in the house to have a dishwasher. And they say you use less water, but I don't see it being a problem with just the two of us. Once my son is in college, he just always eats, it's like 6 meals a day. So there's like dishes everywhere because of that. But my husband and I don't eat all that much, and I always clean up as I cook. So she also has a no-frills kitchen, and she hand washes, and said that they do have curbside recycling where they'll pick up your recycling, but you're charged if you don't sort it yourself. And then, I'm not sure how to say this name, Katini Smith, or K. Smith, said a good use for those organza bags, like Love Knitting will send your yarn in, is to use those as produce bags, because that's an area where I was like, my store expects me to use these plastic bags. She also said that woven baskets, a lot of people use them where she lives. Well, I talked to someone at my store, and they said there are reusable bags you can get on Amazon. Great. That lots of people use for their produce. I've never seen anyone do that at my grocery store, but that's really great, and I plan to look into getting some reusable bags for that. And then a lot of stuff, we're just not bagging it anymore. If it has to be peeled, we don't have to bag it. If it's not tons of little things like plums, butternut squash doesn't have to be bagged. It can be put in the basket and then later put in our, green bags. So I asked you guys if you were doing any new things to move or getting outdoors more, and Shauna of Shauna Stitches said she got a bike and she's been riding it every day. She loves it, and she finds that she realizes she's been riding, and the whole time there's this big smile on her face. I love that, because biking is just such a happy making thing. I told her I always find I start singing out loud. Going through neighborhoods, I don't realize I'm doing it at first, but like songs will come in my head, maybe some of them from my childhood, and I'll just start singing. I always get in a good mood when I'm riding my bike. Jen is is a runner, but has also been washing dishes by hand. It's a meditative time. She said that their washing machine went out. It was new, and like they had to have it repaired like 5 times under warranty even. And when it finally went out, not under warranty, they were just like, forget it. We'll just keep it there as a reminder that we never want a dishwasher. And so they hand wash. That's a meditative time for her, but also walking. And she finds that she's thinking about her family and family connections and her father who had passed away. And I thought, without that walk and that quiet time, dogs, without that quiet time, those thoughts might not have been had. She might not have taken the moment to slow down and even consider things. And so that's just one of those reasons why getting outdoors and doing something kind of meditative, moving, is really good for our brain to decompress. And we start finding these thoughts that we have not allowed ourselves time to have. Catherine has been spending a lot of time outdoors, barefoot in her garden. She also sits a lot on the floor to kind of vary what she does. Melanie is trying to find ways to move, but it's hard because of work, and her focus is like on the work day all day, and then she gets home and I'm sure she's tired. Sylvia walking a bit, in bursts or bouts of movement and gardening, but she has rheumatoid arthritis. It's hard to do. And then Carolyn Johnson has been searching for movements that she can do, ways to exercise or move with fibromyalgia and not have pain. So all 3 of them, I recommended the website that I've been going to, Katie Bowman's website, nutritiousmovement.com, and I'm reading one of her books, Move Your DNA. And there are lots of things you can do, Melanie, at your workstation, at work, often to move, just to vary your movements, stretch your hamstrings, because the way we sit all the time, most of us have like a shortened muscles in the back of our body. Our hamstrings just never fully extend. Things like that you can do, change to standing from sitting, take a break from looking at the screen, obviously. All of these things, there might be some good ideas there. And the same for you, Sylvia and Carolyn, because she is big on not doing exercise, but just moving in a way that's gentle for your body. And she has a lot of corrective movements that you can do that might help places that are sore, or help you work into walking or something with no pain. It's worth looking at. Julianne was asking, well, what's the deal with the sitting on the floor? Because several people have mentioned it, and I had said I was doing that more. It is just, like you guessed, Julianne, to break up your habits, how you move, try and get your body to be used in all sorts of ways. Because if we were living 50 years ago, 100 years ago, we would totally be doing lots more movements with our body. We would be stronger, and we wouldn't have these muscular imbalances that we have now. And then, like I talked about last week, I probably didn't convey it well at all. You just need to read the book. Everything, the way our blood is pumped through our body, the way our cells affect our DNA, the way capillaries are built, filled, whatever, it all makes a difference how we move. So moving lots of different ways ensures a more balanced development of our bodies. So Julianne does have Dynamic Aging, a book by Katie Bowman, so I hope she'll give me the scoop on that after she reads it, because I'll probably read another one of her books, but I just don't know which one. So here's what I've been doing. I've been sitting on the floor, like I said, a lot, sitting in different like stretching positions, like old school gym stretches is what they look like. Your legs are out and you're leaning this way, you're leaning that way. Legs forward, hamstring stretch. I'm making sure I keep my pelvis neutral the whole time. And something I also noticed after reading this book, I had this like health period that wasn't so great in the last few years, and I kind of lost touch with my body. I wasn't moving much, and I gained a lot of weight. Like a hormonal thing going on, and I didn't feel like me. So I really wasn't noticing my posture. I would try to just overcorrect my posture, pulling my shoulder blades together. She's saying how it's not a great idea, and you often like shear your spine by thrusting your ribs out. So like, you know, I know from Pilates you're supposed to keep your ribs funneled and all that. I'm just being mindful of keeping my ribs down, not popping them out, kind of over exaggerating a good posture. And I don't know, that's just small things I'm doing. Another thing I'm doing is I've been starting to do barefoot walking again. I don't actually go barefoot very often. I will in my yard, but I used to do barefoot or minimal running. But like I said, I didn't do much the last few years, but sit in cars and waiting rooms and things. So I, like my arches fell again, and there was just a lot of disuse in my body. Things got tight and messed up. I've had, over the course of years, different pairs of minimal shoes. I think for walking and running, Vivo Barefoot are the best. These look kind of crummy because I've been walking in wet fields with them, but super, super thin. I mean, I took the insole out of them, so we're talking like this much of a layer of fabric, and there's 0 drop. So one thing we can all do is like wear flat shoes. Any sort of heel isn't good, but a real thick heel is terrible for our bodies. Anyway, so I'm back to doing this some. I'm easing into it. I transitioned like over the course of like months, maybe 6 months, the first time I did it, and I'm gonna take at least that long now. But that's been kind of fun. And my husband's actually gotten on board. He got some water shoes, which water shoes are the cheapest minimal shoe out there. And these are actually Vibram bottoms. Vivo Barefoot has the Vibram style bottom, so it's, you know, you don't have to worry about the 5 fingers, but the you can still feel the ground under your feet. He got water shoes though, and we've been walking like out in fields and stuff when we walk at night. And he's like trying to do like things like the break with his eyes and focusing on distances, because something else discussed in the book is how we've created a lot of nearsightedness in our society by always reading things close to our face, computer screens especially. We never take a break and look far away. You have to go outside to focus far away, and we're not outside very much, so we're losing that ability in the muscles in our eyes. So you know, he's taking breaks and doing that. He's trying to vary how he sits, stand more, things like that. Kind of interesting. One thing I tried, since I am trying to move more anyway, Cassandra Rizzardi, who is Rizza Knits on Instagram and Ravelry, has a mystery knit along going called the Walk the Block Mystery Knit Along, and it's a 12 color wrap or scarf or shawl. I think it's supposed to be a wrap, so maybe kind of scarf-like. And the kits are really beautiful from 6 and 7 fibers. I think that's who's doing the kits. But I didn't know about it in time to get one, and I didn't have any money budgeted for a mini kit. So I got in my stash and I pulled out, this is just some of it, all these colors. And what I did was, Cassandra had all the minis laid out in order of, not in order of how they're used. You don't know how, she's mixing and matching all over the place, but I looked at how they were laid out and how many were in the same color range and how many seemed to be complementary or contrasting. And I just tried to mimic that, but with totally different colors. And so I think I can show this, I'm going to show the first week's stuff. So you know how everybody says, look away. Well, look away. But if you haven't already seen this, you're like me, you're like a loser and not even ready for week 2. These are some Madeline Tosh colors, and then this is Cully Hawthorne Knit Picks yarn. Interesting shape though, huh? The thing about it is, would you ever think you could walk and knit without really looking and make something shaped like this? The neat thing about it is each section where you're repeating back and forth between 2 colors, it's just the same thing you're doing over and over. You can feel your short rows, and it really is very easy to walk and do this. So I did like, say, this much of it on an hour-long walk. I don't normally want to walk and knit because I think it's really important to move your arms. It kind of pumps your lymphatic fluid and it's better for your back. But I was walking so much anyway, I thought, well, I can take an hour of that time and try this. And I have been moving around as I do it. And this little yarn carnival bag is kind of cute because you can tie it up and then you can wear it on your sleeve. It's a really lightweight bag. So I just walked and did it. I might put in a photo. My son is like, walking knitting? Why would you do that? I'm like, because I can. And I was like, you want to see me dance in it? He's like, oh no, you know. He's trying to fill out some application online and I'm standing behind him and he's like, would you please stop hover knitting? So anyway, is this. Oh, and then I wanted to show you. I decided my knit along that I'm hosting, I'm gonna do a prize. I wasn't gonna, it's not about that, but something was given to me, which I don't have to show you today, but I'll show you next time. And I was like, well, I've got to just give that away because it's so great. And I got an extra one of these little pins from Makers Merch. So it says, member of the Makers community. That's Mars from Hey Brownberry and Kelly of Celtic Cast On. They do Makers Merch and they have some really cute pins. And so I got an extra one and to add with the yarn that Julianne is donating to this. She didn't do it for this knit along. She just did it for me. And you'll see why. It's so sweet. But I was like, well, you know, there's only a handful of people that are going to do this knit along. So I'm going to actually know one of the people that gets this. That's cool, you know. Okay, so another thing I asked you is, you know, how are you moving more? And see if you think of anything you don't normally think of or any new perspectives while you're walking. Because I talked about that guy who had a, I think was it Bob Popjoy? Ben Popjoy, yeah. He has that coffee club where you walk and you listen and you talk to people, and how, you know, getting outdoors kind of reframes a situation and might give you a change of perspective. And I tried that. I had a disagreement. I disagree with someone anyway. I didn't actually have a disagreement with them, but I disagree with something, and I asked them about it online, and they were offended. And I was like, oh, well, I did not mean to offend you. I'm taking my comment down right now, but I couldn't agree with them on what they were saying at all. So I took it on my walks, and I tried to really, and I prayed about it, and I thought, you know, show me, God, if I'm wrong here. And I definitely wanted to try and at least understand. I didn't really ever change my perspective, so that didn't happen. But I did give it an effort, and I felt better about it in the end. I felt like I handled it as good as I could. You know how you can talk really frank and familiar with someone, and you think that you're familiar with them, but then they might take it all wrong. I didn't want that to happen, so I definitely have learned my lesson. I listened to something on a podcast, and then I considered it throughout the week about mobility justice, which it's, say, for instance, people not being able to get to a store because it's hard to walk through a neighborhood safely. It's not laid out for pedestrians, and nothing is now. Everything's laid out for cars, or someone's in a wheelchair. And there's no way for them to get into this building because it's not handicap accessible, or the streets are not. It's not safe for them. Or maybe there's a crime element and it doesn't feel safe. Or maybe it's a person doesn't feel safe for their skin color walking in an area. They feel like they might not be wanted. These are the kind of things that these people think about, and they try and help cities plan around. The goal is that our cities would kind of start to line up more and be based on the human movement, the human element, not vehicles. And so that people can get the things they need within a mile or two of their home and not necessarily have to be able to get on a highway and go really far. There's a lot of people who don't own a vehicle, or it's hard for them to do that. There are people who can no longer drive. There are people who are handicapped and can't. There are young people who can't drive yet, and all of that has to be taken into account. So there, you can see there's things that have to do with city zoning and things that have to do with repairs and roadways, sidewalks, things that have to do with the way people treat one another in an area, prejudices and biases. It's very all-encompassing. But as I thought about it all through the week, I really agreed that a city that's laid out for people to move on foot is a place where it's easier to have community. There's benches, there's shade on the streets. People will want to get outdoors. It's so much better for their health, but it's better for the community. They speak to one another. And she, the lady speaking, encouraged you to do what you can to create this sense of community and freedom of movement. So, like, be friendly to people when you're out on the street. If you're waiting at a bus stop, speak to the someone waiting. It might be a woman who's maybe a little insecure in the evening at a bus stop. Let them know you're friendly. Build community bonds. I really liked it. And I was telling my husband about it the other day. We were sitting at Starbucks talking about mobility justice. And one of the things she mentioned was bus stop seats, airport seats. You know how things are, they don't want people to sleep on them, especially homeless people. And so they put like a handrest here and there where no one can sleep on it, or they're tilted weird so you can't rest on them. And she was saying we need to take into account people who don't have a home. You know, do we really not want people to have a place to take a load off and rest? And I thought about it. I know there's been stories of large groups of people without a home making sort of tent cities, and there's some wild things happening there. There's been a lot of sanitation issues. So I don't know. I don't really know a lot about those issues with the large tent cities. I don't know. Do I really want a place where a homeless person can't rest in the shade? I don't know. I don't think I like that. I don't like that. I want people without a home to be able to take a load off here or there. So we're sitting in Starbucks and we're talking about that, and then I noticed this man outside sitting under one of the awnings and the umbrellas. And he's older, he's elderly, and he's like adjusting and it made me think of someone with dementia, which he might have had, because he kept adjusting and readjusting and reshuffling his papers. He had lots of newspaper, and then he had some napkins, and he had his drink, and I think he was trying to pull a chair so he could put his feet up. And his shoes didn't fit his feet, and he didn't have laces on his shoes, possibly because he didn't have the coordination to tie them. He moved like someone with dementia. He shuffled his feet, and his drink spilled. His papers blew everywhere with a hard wind, and his drink spilled. And so we jumped up and helped him collect it, and my husband went and got him another drink. While he was in there, he asked about the man. Is he okay? And they said, well, he's homeless and he's friendly. Someone called the police on him yesterday, and he wasn't hurting anyone, though. And the police said he's nice and he isn't hurting anything, so leave him alone. And he bought a drink, so leave him alone. So he brought his drink out, and we talked with him, and we invite him to come sit by us. And he did ask for my husband for some money, but he wasn't approaching us asking for it. We did ask him to come sit by us. Anyway, he said he was homeless, and it was clear, like, he didn't need something we could provide. Like, if we had said, here, come get in our car and we'll take you to the shelter, he probably would have been all of a sudden like, what am I doing here in this car, and scared. I mean, it wasn't the right thing for us to do. Plus, he seemed to know where those places were. He's just looking for a place to sit in the shade outside of the heat. It was very hot that day. So anyway, as we went to our car, a lady rolled down her window and said, did you see that man? Was he bothering you? I said, no, he wasn't bothering me. And you need to understand, I live in Texas. He was a black man. This lady was white. And in the South, you know, there's still so much friction between black and white people, and a lot of bias against an older black man, especially when it looks like he's homeless. So she's like, well, he was scaring me. I'm like, well, he wasn't hurting anything. She goes, well, he's talking to himself. He was kind of loud. I just thought he was going to pull out a gun. I'm like, pull out a gun? He doesn't even have shoelaces. How is he going to have a gun? You know, I don't know what she's thinking. But she's got this bias, you know, and I'm thinking this is someone who definitely wouldn't want this man to have a place to rest his feet. And I'm not looking down on her at all. But I definitely realized this is how I don't want to be. Anyway, we told her, no, he's fine. His drink spilled. We just went and talked to him about it, and my husband got him another drink. And he said we didn't have to do that, but my husband did it anyway. She was like, well, you're nicer than me. I called my husband, and he called the cops. I said, yeah, well, he wasn't hurting anyone, and he was a customer. And we left, and my husband's like, she scares me. She's the one. But here's the thing. It was something to think about while I was walking, all these issues turning around in my head, and then I'm confronted with the very thing I've been thinking about. And I kind of got to see, no, this is who I want to be, you know? So I don't know. That walking and taking time to think, it makes a difference. I never would have even thought about the mobility of a homeless person or like wheelchairs, but like a lot of other, that's just not an issue I would have thought of. I made that so long, yet I thought it was important. I was glad I took the time to just walk in silence and think about it, is what I'm trying to say. And then I got to share my thoughts with my husband, and he gets to think about it for a few moments, and then bam, it's happening right in front of us, part of what we were discussing. And so we're deciding who we want to be based on all this. And I don't know. I also had some thoughts about a lesson I taught Sunday to college and career age young adults about, we're talking about the Garden of Eden, you know, and so there's Adam and Eve and the serpent tempting them with the fruit. And it's just one kind of fruit that they can't eat, right? They have this whole garden, everything that God has made for them, so easy, so good. But he gets them to focus, he gets Eve to focus on what she does not have and create a dissatisfaction in her. And kind of a distrust, like, well, this is a good thing. If God can do it, it's good. And why wouldn't he want me to have this good thing? Sort of a distrust in God and his goodness, you know? And so I was talking with him about how we do that. I do that. I've been focused and I've been dissatisfied about some things recently. And, you know, there are a lot of wonderful good things in life that we just aren't going to have. Some of it's relational, some of it's health-wise. But to be able to look at all the other good things we do have, can we carry on without that one thing or two things? Yes, we can. Vibeke had some thoughts this week, and she shared them on Instagram about this podcast episode. And one of them was focusing on the blessings. She said the more that she does it, the easier it becomes, the more natural to see the good things, the good side of things. She got a chronic fatigue syndrome diagnosis, and she mentioned it. With that, there were some negative emotions and things. She would try to brush it off and not think about it like that was bravery, and then she eventually realized it's really not bravery. I need to, as I honestly look for good points and everything, I also need to face my negative feelings or the negative, difficult, hard things in life. And one thing she said, this is basically what she said, the deeper the grief or the sorrow, then the deeper the joy and the blessing that follows. You experience deeper joys and about the blessings when you have experienced, really fully owned these feelings of grief or sorrow, difficult feelings. And it made me think about a time where I was going through loneliness. We had just moved here where we live. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have any friends that were like me. You know, I still don't know a lot of people that are like me, but that like the things I like in person, in real life. But there was loneliness. And when I finally realized, what is this thing that's kind of, I feel lonely, I faced it. And then I started trying to become what I wanted. Like if I wanted friends that were interested in me or encouraging or kind, I can at least, with every interaction I have with other people, be that to the best of my ability. And so I started trying to be that. And it did somewhat satisfy me to just have something to do with that kind of friendship. Even if it was not received or not appreciated or, you know, and sometimes it was returned. But if it wasn't, okay, I got to be one half of that equation and it felt good. And then she pointed out to me, and it's true, I also really, really appreciated the deeper friendships when they came along. Rosamond has a diagnosis also of chronic fatigue syndrome, and it required a total lifestyle change for her. You can see it in the comments on the last episode 11. But it wasn't that hard. She said they went down to living on 1/10 of the previous income they had had, but they were so happy, and her husband and son were so happy to be with her more, that it was worth it. And she's just enjoying the simple things in life, being home, quiet moments, being outdoors in her garden, and she's enjoying being creative. So the knitting community has been a big deal for her. And she's been trying some new things. We've been talking about doing new things. Brioche was new for her. Her first fingering weight shawl a year ago, then brioche, and then now colorwork yokes. So this is a great time to be doing colorwork sweaters because there are so many great patterns coming out. And so when we talk about new things, you know, I'm doing the Junko, June, and July knit along. And the hashtag is Junko, June, and July. And, oh, here it is. It fell. I really love this pattern. I'm doing plum. Junko Okamoto has a bunch of great patterns on Ravelry. I think all of them are one-size patterns. So you can see what the finished measurements are. They all fit really big, like almost some of them like poncho type. This one is a cropped sweater, but it's like this fits wide. It's going to be really wide like that, but have a very interesting neck shape. It's very unusual, and it's different than anything I've done. I've also never used this. Where is it? Okay, I looked up how to say it, but then it's been a week and I've forgotten. Moke yarn, but it's Elena is the yarn type, and I have a link to their website. It's super rustic. It feels so real. Like I really feel like I'm using animal fiber as I make something. I can't describe it. It's just added sensory benefit, more than usual when I use wool. It's done, and I talked about it in the last episode, so I won't go into it. You can listen to it there. And I'll have a link to their site where their whole story is. It's a really great story, why they have their company. But I'm really enjoying, oh, and I didn't even show you this. Ribbing. Lots of 1x1 ribbing. I don't like 1x1 ribbing, but you know what? I didn't even mind it here because it's this interesting shape. You can have this squared front, it's going to look really wide, like almost boat neck, and the back be V, a V-neck, or you can flip it and wear the V-neck in front and the back be, anyway, it looks small, but it's just because it's scrunched on these needles. It is going to be good. I'm knitting to gauge, and this ribbing required super tight cast on small needles, and it went from like a 1 to a 4 in size. So to get gauge, I'm already knitting on a 2. So I did really tight on zeros, then loose, regular on zeros, then really tight on 1s, then regular on 1s, and then really tight on these. And then now that I'm in the regular pattern, I'm just doing regular gauge, regular tension. But here is, this is like the sleeve, has this cable detail on it, and you can see all along the body. There's this really interesting, it's really hard to see. I just don't have enough done. A really interesting broken up garter and lace pattern. Then there's going to be color work. So I'll show you how it's going to look because it's very neat. Here we go. really interesting shape. And you see how the sleeves, the body is so wide. There's a lot of room there. It's a one size pattern. So, you know, if you're larger, it won't fit as oversized on you. If you're smaller, it'll be more oversized. So you can play with your yarn weights and your tension if you want to change the sizing. And I saw that some people have done that. I'm going for the size in the pattern. I feel like whether I gain or lose weight, you know, I'll probably be safe with that. And I can always block out a little if I need to. So I love this. It's very new to me. I want to do her Meg pattern next. It's such a great cabled pattern. I think I showed you last week. And the ribbing, like I said, it wasn't even boring. The whole thing has been really interesting, but it does require my focus. And several of you have said you're going to join in on this knit along. On Instagram, it's hashtag Junko, June, and July. And you can talk to me about it there. If you use the hashtag with your photo, I'll be chatting with you about it, and so will other members. And then you can also talk about it here. I know Jen is going to, her yarn should have come already, and she might have cast on. Melanie said she might, and then there's Steinberger on Instagram. I don't know her first name. I don't remember it if she lists it. Who's someone new to me. And so anyway, like I said, I am going to have a prize for this. I wasn't worried about it, wasn't going to do it. It's all about just talking and enjoying something new. But Julianne has just blessed me with something. So I'm gonna share that. And I'll show it to you next time. It should be here by next episode. Okay. So, dogs. All this new stuff, and you know, I noticed in these comments, it's like 3-4 people I've mentioned in this comment, and then one person who said in another episode comments their husband had been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. It's a lot of people for so small a viewer group and such a small group commenting. That's a lot of people. Chronic fatigue, there's rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, and I don't know how many of those are considered autoimmune conditions now. A lot of things are being renamed as autoimmune conditions that weren't previously. But it's obviously a big deal. It's happening. And kind of like Vibeke said, focusing on the blessings of all the people who have mentioned having it, none who have slowed their life down because of their diagnosis have regretted slowing their life down. None of them say, oh, I wish I was still rushing around like insane and, you know, trying to keep up with this and that and working really hard. They all really appreciate slowing down their life. It got me thinking about, you know, all the stuff I'm reading about how we're not moving like we used to. We're spending more time reading and mentally taken up with screens, but not as much time with families. We're not outdoors. We're not exercising our eyes appropriately outdoors. Even sound-wise, the decibel levels that we're exposed to now are so different than 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And if you add earbuds, it's crazy. It's changing the way our body is handling and processing sound, and our ears are working. I just started thinking that this great slowdown that people are doing when they have a diagnosis, or someone like me, I don't have some kind of diagnosis, and I was already feeling a little better physically from my period of extreme stress. We might look at it like it's a hassle at first, but you know, it's really just yesterday's normal, and we're calling it really slowed down and simple and basic living, but it's just what our grandparents would have called normal. And so knowing that makes me feel really good about saying no. Anyway, it's just making it easier for me to think no, absolutely no to any new anything introduced to my life. I feel like fighting for a slowed down perspective. I don't care if I seem like I'm not accomplishing enough to other people. If one whole day is about doing laundry or working out in the garden and not much else, then so what? So what? So anyway, the Sencha had left a really good quote saying, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence isn't an act, but a habit." I thought that was a really thought-provoking quote that will give me something to think about as I walk. We are doing a lot of habitual stuff that is excessive and not good for us. And again, just like in those first few episodes of this podcast, we talked about simplifying. So like there's the too much clothing and too much stuff in our house. Carolyn Johnson had recommended reading Overdressed. I didn't mention it last week, but it's a book about how we buy more clothing than we need and then we throw it away and it ends up in another country's landfills, polluting them with toxic stuff. We are what we repeatedly do. That's not who I want to be. You know, and just like I said, as I was walking this week and thinking about mobility of people, even people that might make you uncomfortable, or you're not quite sure, I mean, should they be laying on that park bench or whatever? I was deciding who I want to be, and we are what we repeatedly do. Part of deciding who we want to be is how we spend our time. Do I want to be up on every current event? Do I want to know the who's who and this and that and social media and all of it? I mean, my social media experience is almost entirely knitters. It's all positive. I'm not feeling any pressure to buy things. Like I might have at one time been really tempted, like I said, once I realized, oh, this isn't so great for me, the temptation's kind of gone. I mean, I see stuff I want and I think, when I get the money, I might get that. But I don't, it's positive. It's completely positive now. But watching the news, Facebook as social media is not the same as Instagram or Ravelry. It's an extremely negative place. Buying more stuff than I need. I just, spending an extra amount of time sitting in a car or in a chair when I don't have to, when I could be standing to prepare my meal for myself or outside walking. I don't know. It's just got me thinking. Maybe some of this will ring true with you. Living Friendly had said that they are another couple that are planning on refurbishing a bus, making it a tiny home for their family of 4. So Ruth had already said that episodes ago. Living Friendly is doing that too, and she's had to go through all of their things, you know, and I asked, what was the biggest sacrifice for you? I haven't heard a response back yet, but, you know, it may not feel like a sacrifice now, but probably there was something you were like, ugh, I'm not going to be able to bring this. A lot of that stuff we just don't need, and I definitely don't need these stresses to my brain, my body, my vision, you know, the internet. April McGrath links an article in one of the last 2 episodes to this phenomenon, potato chip news. And it's just talking about a lot of the news we see on social media. I'm thinking Facebook especially. It's kind of catastrophic and tragic or frightening. And it's meant to elicit a response out of us. It's also constantly repeated. It's really easy to digest. It doesn't require a lot of thought. It's not like sitting and reading a print magazine or a newspaper article. It's very visual. And what it is it's we get kind of hooked on it. And they said in the article, they kind of allude to people using it to cope with their own bad negative feelings, yet it causes other negative feelings and often coping behaviors in itself. So for instance, somebody said they were watching the news, they were really worried about the election and they watched all the election coverage, but then that made them so nervous they ate like a pan of brownies while they were watching it. That's like a funny example, but I don't know. I don't really do that. I don't watch the news to escape. But I don't know, I might watch stuff. Like I might look at something that talks about stuff you can have for your home or craft stuff I could do. And that might make me, like, might be a way to escape and then make me want to overspend, you know, as a habit. But I really think that watching the political coverage is really doing us in, a lot of people, really bad for us. And so I have quit listening to political podcasts just for a while. I didn't listen to a bunch, and I didn't fully agree with anyone. I just would listen to a little bit of this here and there, because I get one side mostly where I live. So I try to listen to the other side a little and hope I'll get a balance. But it was really bringing me down. And so I moved to health-focused things or just quiet and where I consider stuff. It's not wrong to be informed at all, but like I said, this isn't necessarily like in-depth reporting. These are the kind of things you click and post and share, and I don't personally need that, and I know how it's affected family members of mine who, you know, entertain it. So if we are what we repeatedly do, I don't want to do these self-medicating things. I've noticed too that a lot of that potato chip news is there's a bottom line where somebody's making money out of it. They're wanting you to support a cause that benefits somebody financially, or it's, you know, there's lots of advertisements. I don't know. It's very, or pushing you to want to have things that, you know, you buy. There's a big commercial. Okay, dude, do you have to just throw yourself against the tripod and start licking? Okay. April quoted Tim Wu from Attention Merchants. He says, as William Joyce observed, we must reflect that when we reach the end of our days, our life experience will equal what we have paid attention to, whether by choice or default. And that is really a good thought. So if you put those two quotes together, we are what we repeatedly do, and our life experience will equal what we have paid attention to. It just makes me want to be really thoughtful with where I'm putting my focus. And so I have not kept the cleanest house recently, and I have not been super active in certain things that have been available. Like I could have been a worker at this or at that, and I didn't do it. But I have to say, I have felt, even given some rough things that happened a week or so ago, more calm as a person than normal. I've been outside twice as much. I've been just living a slower paced life. I have slept better and deeper than I have in years. So, I don't know. There's something to that. I don't know if that even all segued well, but it doesn't matter. I try to kind of put these thoughts together and the different comments you guys say. I try to make it like make sense. It's like kind of like writing a 5-paragraph paper, only I don't begin with, in the dawn of history, there was once knitting, and I don't end with, thus, you know. So, I do feel like with the amount of people talking about health issues, chronic health issues, this is kind of huge. And these are people of all ages. And I've had 3 periods of really wacky, bad fatigue and health problems. One in my teens, I had mono twice, and then pneumonia. And then once in my 20s to 30s, and then once in my 40s. I'm just coming out of it. And Julie Turcotte had asked if I would talk a little more about that, and I think that I will next week. And I was wondering if you guys, her question was, could you talk a little more about what these health issues were and how you jump-started your health again? That is what I want to talk about next week. And since so many of you seem to have somebody in your life or you yourself have been coping with something, be it fatigue, mental health issues, depression. I mean, okay, this modern world, you know, we're talking about how we live a lifestyle that's so insane, and nothing like what the human body was made to live. We've all got something. So anyway, would you answer for Julie also, what is jump-starting your health, or what has jump-started you getting back to health after some kind of illness, diagnosis, something like that? I can briefly say, it was 3 periods in my life, and this last couple of years, I fully realized stress did it every single time. I am super prone or susceptible to stress, but it wasn't just the stress of being busy. It wasn't happy stress. It wasn't just the stress of staying up late watching TV, how that stresses your brain and your eyes. It was deep, deep emotional stress. It was things I took on, beliefs that I had that just weren't right, and they were causing me they were decay inside of me. And then the rest of it, stress with poor food choices, stress with bad sleep, that was it, avalanche. So, you guys, what things have jump-started your health? Please leave a comment. And with it, if you want to do the up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, and find your Ravelry member number, leave your Ravelry member number too if you're a knitter, because that's kind of fun. Anyway, thank you for listening to my very long notes. These aren't all notes from this episode. This is all the episodes. Goodbye. Oh my gosh. Almost sat on my precious wooden needles. It would have really hurt my precious hide.